former Trump campaign White House Deputy Communications Director Caroline Sunshine. Very outspoken over not supporting a war in Iran, and joins us now. So you think there is a very sizable anti-war part of MAGA?
Yes, Leland, thank you for having me. And I mean, I appreciate being called outspoken, but I don't think I'm outspoken at all. I think I'm speaking up and speaking on behalf of a lot of people who share my views. You know, the president campaigned on no new wars. I was proud to work in his first administration. I was proud to work on his 2024 campaign, where we heard him say that over and over and over again. And I'm speaking for the people who are asking very basic questions, which is, why are we at war with Iran and what are we achieving? Because we are 18 days into this war.
Right,
we have 13 U.S. service members who...
Let's separate two things. Let's separate whether the war is a good idea, which you and I clearly disagree on, from this MAGA wing of the party that seems to agree with you that so many say does not exist. We'll do them in reverse order. GOP approval of Iran strikes. MAGA Republicans, 90%. Republicans, 77%. Non-MAGA Republicans, 54%. We're told that that means, look, all of Trump's supporters, MAGA Republicans, are all in on the war. You look at that polling differently. Explain.
I do, yes. So that poll you're referencing is from NBC, that 90% of MAGA supports this war. But then, as you said, if you go down in the next column, it says only 50% of non-MAGA supports this. And here's where I think this poll is being analyzed incorrectly. When President Trump came onto the scene and became the leader of the Republican Party split into two wings. You had the MAGA wing and you had the non-MAGA wing. Historically, up until this point in time, the non-MAGA wing of the Republican Party has been never-Trumpers, establishment voices, neoconservatives who completely rejected President Trump's philosophy of no more intervening in the Middle East. So when you see that group, non-MAGA, only 54% of non-MAGA supports this war, there's no way that that group can mean the establishment, neoconservative wing of the party. That must not be what non-MAGA means anymore, because if that was still what non-MAGA meant, we know that group of people, that they have 90% for this war. And so what I suspect is happening is actually something far worse and more alarming for the president and his base, I think, which is that what I have heard routinely from people is, I am not MAGA anymore. I am hearing frequently from people who are three-time Trump voters saying, oh, I know why that poll says that. I'm not MAGA anymore.
Why?
I'm non-MAGA. And so what that poll to me is revealing is that the president's base has left and is leaving in real time. And that's far more concerning to me. And that's how I analyze those numbers.
It's a fascinating analysis. It's why we asked you to come on. I think it's really an important one. But let's now get into this idea about whether it is MAGA or America First to launch the war in Iran. How is it not in the U.S. interest? How is it not America First to take out or seriously degrade America's greatest enemy for the past 47 years?
Well, I think that depends on who you classify as America's greatest enemy. I think a lot of Americans still feel that China is America's greatest enemy and poses much more of a significant threat. So this is why I pose these two questions, which is, anytime a nation is at war, war is the use of force to achieve political objectives. And anytime a nation is going to wage war, it has to answer and should be able to answer in very simple terms. Why are we at war and what are we achieving? Well, the administration has offered a few reasons for why we did this. One of them was that Iran was an imminent threat and that we needed to prevent them from obtaining nuclear weapons, to which my question would be, why aren't we at war with Pakistan? Why aren't we at war with North Korea? Because Pakistan has nuclear weapons, as does North Korea.
And neither of them chant death to America every day in their parliament. But I want to back up a second of the Tucker.
But North Korea has weapons.
Let me just back up here on the Tucker Carlson wing here of this party. There seems to be this new movement that is led by Tucker. Is it that is, to your point, having sort of left or abandoned President Trump? Here's Tucker Carlson and Kent talking about whether or not Iran was on the verge of a nuclear weapon. Take a listen.
Was Iran on the verge of getting a nuclear weapon? No, they weren't, 3 weeks ago when this started, and they weren't in June either. I mean, the Iranians have had a religious ruling, a fatwa, against actually developing a nuclear weapon since 2004. That's been in place since 2004. That's available in the public sphere. But then also we had no intelligence to indicate that fatwa was being disobeyed.
Okay, so here would be the next question, Caroline. These people that are coming up to you who said they voted for Trump 3 times, they believed in him, they think he's the greatest president. You and I were at the same rallies where people talked about their belief in Trump and how they trusted him. And so is it now that they think he's so stupid he was deceived by Israel or is a stooge of Israel? How do they explain trusting him for so long?
I think because, again, those questions of why is the United States at war with Iran and why is it in our national interest have not been answered. Again, I would go back to my analogy,
but Trump saying that isn't enough for you.
The president... Well, here's what the president has said, and here's what the administration has said. They've said 2 things that I think people have additional questions about. And by the way, you have a right as an American to question your own government. And I think that's something really important that we don't forget in the midst of war.
No one's saying you don't.
The most important right you have as an American is to question your government and to question the reasons that they give. And I see people in the media trying to sort of bully this part of our country out of asking questions. But if you were skeptical about COVID, if you were skeptical about the answers the Biden administration was giving about the president's health, it's okay to be skeptical of this too. Okay. And out of all the rights you have as an American, this is the one to exercise the most.
You're arguing about rights that I
out of all the reasons.
Okay, Caroline, you'll better understand this better than most. I'm up against a better.
First Amendment.
I'm up against a hard break. Thank you. Not saying anybody can't ask questions. I just have different answers for them. Caroline, you'll be back. Thank you very much. Next, one thing for that's what happens with a hard break.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.